Good afternoon and welcome to the M Word. Apologies for running late today, that's my bad. But we're all here now, so thank you very much. My guests, as usual, are Yasmin and Samara, who are joining me today. Now, today, I've been prompted a question that one of our new Neds to join us shortly, Wendy Ford, very kindly asked if we would do a discussion around what's it like before and after you've had a screening with the M Word. And I thought, do you know what, that's a really valuable opportunity. So I saw Samara first this morning and said, what do you reckon? And she was like, yeah, I'm up for that. And then I very quickly asked Yasmin just before, he said, I suppose I'll have to get used to that, which is a very interesting combination already, because obviously Samara had the opportunity to explore it with me and has had a chance to get her head around it, whereas poor Yasmin has got last minute news and is struggling with the concept with 30 seconds notice. So that's already something that I struggle with a lot, is not being given information until the very, very last minute, and the change that's expected to kind of process it and then just get on with it. So maybe that's a really good starting point, isn't it? We've all experienced it. What do you want to say about it?
It depends what it is.
I mean, depends what it is.
I'm not uncomfortable because you only told me 30 seconds ago. I'm more annoyed because obviously I was like, oh, I'm working from home today. I'm not going to be doing unearthing, so I don't have to bother with my makeup or getting dressed properly. I can wear hoodies and it's fine. So I'm like, oh, God's sake. Because then I rushed everything, didn't I? Going, oh, God. But if it's something that's really important or I know I'm going to get really stressed about because it's not in my normal, then I will get really worried about it. Like, for example, going to a doctor's appointment that they've said, oh, we can schedule in tomorrow. And it's like, oh, no, now I've got to try and scramble. That I can't deal with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Samara?
I think sometimes it can be a good thing because I quite often think I work quite well under pressure, and the less notice I've had, then it's less time to get anxious about it and overthink it.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. So, difficulties that we had then with, like for me, when I was a lot younger, I came across this understanding that clearly there was something very different about me, and I couldn't see what other people could see. But the feeling I had from other people was, you're a bit wacky, you're a bit weird, you're a bit different. There's actually something wrong with you. And my family were the biggest culprits for that. Whereas my peers didn't say there's something wrong with you. My peers were very much about, well, you're a bit different from us and we wouldn't engage with you. But my family made it almost a mission to say, you're not like us, you're not intelligent, you'll never go to university, you can't possibly do things because you're just so inadequate. So I kind of want to really kind of tease that understanding before we had the screening. So come on, ladies, what experience do you remember?
To be honest, I don't think I ever really fit in. So I don't think I ever experienced being told you don't. I was just very aware of it. And I know a couple of times growing up, I was like, why don't I fit in? And sometimes you were quite quick to reassure me that it wasn't always there was something wrong with me. It was sometimes it's kids' parents didn't like you, so then the kids didn't like me. So it wasn't always my fault. I don't know how true that is, because even parents, let's be honest, can be quite cliquey. You don't grow out of that. So I don't genuinely know if it was me or if it was you or if it was them. So I can't really blame it on anybody, really.
Yeah. Tamara?
Personally, I feel like even though I was quite the outcast when I was younger, it was something I noticed more when I got older. So when I got to about 21, when I went back into education after having a child, that's when I really noticed the differences. Like, everyone else was a real adult, and then there was me, and everyone would comment quite often on how weird and strange I apparently was, because I was quite hyperactive.
Right.
And yeah, so I got those comments a lot, and that is when I really felt like I didn't fit in. And I think when I was a child, I did find ways of covering up that I didn't fit in. So when I was a teenager, I went through like a goth phase. So that's what people picked up on. That's why I was different, because I was a goth. And yeah, it was when I was an adult, it was kind of like, oh, other people don't act like this, or other people are just so different to me and I don't fit in.
That I really like that point you've made, that you're feeling that you don't fit in. So you've worked out you don't feel you fit in. Where did you feel you felt, or where did you feel you felt you could fit into something? I mean, I know you do pole dancing, but that's relatively recent, isn't it? It's not, you didn't start that when you were a youngster.
No, I mean, when I started in university, I was about 22.
Yeah,
when I started pole dancing, and that kind of is where, it took me a bit of time, because I do take a bit of time to like settle in somewhere, but everyone was kind of crazy there, and I could just act how I wanted. And I had a very, very close friend who was very similar to me, so it just became that we were the funny ones. We were like the class clowns. Everyone laughed at us. It didn't really matter that we were weird. That just kind of became who we were. And in the end, people liked that about us. They liked that we were different. But, that's taken a long time.
Yeah. So when you were a lot younger then, what was kind of, what did you notice about what you were thinking about others' perceptions of you?
When I'm like talking back to like primary school, I definitely felt like the outcast. A lot of friends would like kind of arrange to see each other and not let me know, and like there was definitely like people could spot the differences. I was a very quiet child, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I was very quiet. I was very anxious, but for me, because I didn't really, I was quite young when I stopped going to school, so I didn't really have to try and fit in any longer with anyone.
Yeah, good point. So
yeah,
Tamara's noted feeling quite anxious and very quiet, Yasmin. What about you when you were really young? Did you experience similar, or?
I think I moved around school so much. It wasn't like a long-term thing, It wasn't like I went to the same school with the same people for my entire career. So it's not like I was still being looked at as a different one. Because I moved so much, it would take a while for me to not be seen as the new person anymore. So that kind of took it off from me. I think it was more upsetting when I left school in year 11 and I had my form tutor go, "It was so nice of you to join us in year 9." And I was like, "I've been here since year 8. There's just an entire year people forgot I was there." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So,
do you think you were a quiet child though?
depends how you phrase quiet.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it was like, I'm not in the mood to deal with you stupid people today, so I'm just going to stay quiet.
Yeah.
And other times it was like, I'm not feeling great. I'm not feeling well enough to pretend to be happy, so it was quiet because of that, or people spoke over me, so it was like a combination of everything. So looking back at it, people probably would have said yes, she was a quiet child, but it wasn't always by my choice.
So I remember actually being really anxious to the point of almost being mute. I certainly wouldn't go and instigate conversations within the playground. I wouldn't talk in class. And I know that as I got older, it kind of got harder, but that just made me more of a target for being picked on, for not speaking and for not having friendship groups, not having a close peer to talk to. It just became just such an unpleasant, uncomfortable experience. And so I know that made me feel very different, because I constantly wanted to have friends, or at least a friend that I could share my difficulties with, share fun times with. And there was only one opportunity that I truly remember where I had a longish stint, and it was the first boarding school I'd been sent to. And it was quite horrendous in the experience, in that she was 2 years younger than me. And although I really liked her, I was acutely aware that I couldn't sustain a friendship with somebody my own age. And when I did try to engage with my peers in my year, they were very dismissive of me, to the point of being quite brutal. So I think I became very acutely aware, certainly by the time I was sort of like secondary school age, that I was an easy target, to the point that I would try and find places where I could go and hide, to keep well out of the way. And then by the time you kind of hit 15, 16, you just realize that it doesn't matter whether you're at home or at school, nobody sees you as a worthy person. You're just an encumbrance to absolutely everybody. You know, the teachers are saying, well, if only she'd make the effort, if only she would put herself out there, not ever once asking me, do you have the skill set to do it? Are you really struggling? Can I help you? And my family were no different. The attitude was, well, you're just the person you are. You just have to get on with it. You know, it's not our fault. It's nothing we've done. And quite often my mum would say the other side of, these people aren't right for you anyway, so why would you want to engage with them, or why would they want to engage with you when they're clearly nothing like us? And would almost be very derogatory or even offensive about other people, which is a bit concerning now when you think about it. So I think there's a lot of experiences from how we're raised. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I know the way I dealt with it changed when my environment changed. I remember in college, which my whole 2 months.
It went well.
I used to stay in the media suite during lunch times because I had no one to be with. And my teacher was okay with that at first. And then one day he just pulled me aside and he said, you have to leave this room. I'm locking it now. You are not to stay in here. Go somewhere else. And I was like, well, I've got nowhere else to go. So I kind of just sat outside the room on my phone and waited for him to come back. And he was like, did you go anywhere? And I went, no. And he told me off. And I was like, oh, okay, well, where was I supposed to go?
Yeah. What about you, Samara? What did you notice?
I think similar to what you've both said, really. I mean, I had a similar thing with kind of my parents when I was growing up. It was always that, um, I mean, again, I moved to Wales from England, so a lot of the time it was like, oh, it's because you're English and they don't like English people, or you know, like what you said, why would you want to be friends with them? Kind of, it's something wrong with them, not you. Um, but it doesn't really help because you still feel that way inside. And I
Yeah.
think one thing that's quite apparent, which we've all said, is it was just quite a lonely place for all of us. I think loneliness was a big aspect of growing up.
Mm. How does that sit with you, Yasmin? Do you think loneliness was a big thing for you?
Yeah, but unlike you two, I'm an only child. So like, I it wasn't by choice. Whereas like you might have come from families who people didn't want to spend time with you. That's fine, but I didn't have anybody else. So, I would just do weird things. Again, I've talked about it a few times on here, but I used to get dressed in old-fashioned clothes and stand by a window with a china doll to freak people walking past because I was so bored. And I would enjoy it. I'd just pop out from the windowsill and I'd stand there dead stare with this china doll just like, and then
That's
pop
amazing.
down as soon as they turn around to point to their friend, like, did you see that? And then as soon as I realised their friend wasn't looking, I'd pop back up. So that was how I spent my time. I went to Tesco's dressed like a Victorian child on a Saturday because I could. It's fine. I did whatever. I think I spent an entire weekend dressed like Pippi Longstockings, odd rugby socks and all, because that's what I did. I had imaginary worlds and I would try and bring them into my real world because I didn't have, like, I'm not saying you get along with your siblings all the time, but like when neither of you can leave the house, at least you've got somebody else. But I didn't have anybody else, so I kind of had to make my own thing.
Yeah. It's intriguing because quite often I felt like an only child. I was such an outcast within my own family. And I've had, so many discussions with my siblings over the years, and they've said, you weren't on your own and it's all in your head and you're just making this shit up. And it's like, have you tried being inside my mind? Have you tried being inside my body where I feel very anxious or very sad or very lonely? I would love to be able to have a friend or a close friend. And when I did have the opportunity to have friendships, it was really feeling way out of my depth in how do I maintain this friendship? Because, I was either like an exuberant little tiger, over the top, and then run out of energy and capacity. Or it just wasn't consistent enough because I couldn't sustain it. It was just so exhausting and never ever feeling confident that I could be a relaxed person around them.
Yeah, no, I get that. But when it came to my friendships, I think the thing is I felt like I had to keep their attention because I know I was the last choice and I was very aware of that. Out of all of the friends we had, I was the last choice of nobody else is available, so I guess it's going to have to be her. So it was always like, what can I do to keep them interested? Because otherwise I really will have nobody. So, which just really upsets me now because I look back at it and I'm like, why did you waste your time? These friendships that I had, I moved to Wales and nobody spoke to me ever again. And I months later got removed from the group chat, even though nobody was speaking to me in it. And I was like, oh, okay. And now nobody ever talks to me.
Gosh.
So
brutal.
I don't want to listen to their drama anyway. But, it's just like, oh, I really have kind of just been removed. You're gone. Bye now.
What about academically? Because I remember thinking, certainly I muddled through primary school, kind of being really oblivious to what was going on. And certainly I don't remember the pressure that you had, Yasmin, when you were early primary school of having to practice your spellings and times tables. I don't remember that. I don't even know how I got through it. But certainly by the time I'd gone to boarding school, I became aware of exams, tests, people checking over my work, people teasing me that I was completely incompetent with telling the time, doing my times table, spellings, and my handwriting. I was ripped to shreds by my French teacher of all people. And then when I went to my second boarding school, it became very apparent, because what they would do is that they would read out the results of what place you were in the exam poll, and they would tell everybody what results you got percentage wise. So quite often I was hitting 17%, 20%. I would not get any higher than 30% for all my maths, arithmetic, geography, history, Latin. The only things, there were two things that I scored high in, and one was music and one was English. So at that point, it became like that, about how apparently stupid I was, and that I was very incompetent academically. And that really did a nosedive for me, because I realized that not only did people not want to be around me, but academically, people thought I was really stupid, that, there's something really, really wrong with me. I'm not getting it like everybody else. So academically, what did you both kind of feel?
I mean, I still have moments now where I'm like, oh my God, I am so stupid. Like regularly, and I'm like, I've managed to get this far in life, but sometimes it's really like I still can't tell the time. You say times to me, and I go, no, can you say that the other way, because I don't know what you're saying to me. And like I said last night, I hate going into Aldi and Lidl, because I can't do the percentage on the reductions. It's just too much stress. So I don't like going in there, because unless it's blatantly placed to me, I can't do it. And the thing is, I am very aware I had academic burnout pretty early. I was always the top scorer in primary school for everything, and then I started secondary school, and it just went downhill from there. At first, you kept saying to me, why are you getting these grades? You used to get A's and B's. And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't. Something's happened. I don't know. It's almost like I was dropped on my head over the summer, and just something happened and nothing computed anymore. And I remember a teacher saying to me, why don't you get it? Why aren't you understanding? And they would always try and gaslight you into thinking it was you. Is it the way I'm teaching? Is there something wrong? Everybody else is getting it. It's just you. Do I need to teach a different way for you? And it's like, well, obviously, yeah. And it's always like, we've gone over this, Yasmin. We've done this so many times. We've spent this amount of weeks on it. And I'm like, and you're only just now realizing I still don't get it? That's on you. That's not me. What am I supposed to do? So this teacher was like, I don't understand why you don't get it. I've been teaching for 25 years. And it's like, okay. What do you want me to do about that? And I was like, I don't get it. Why not? I don't know. I just don't. Well, you need to go home and revise. And I'm like, my mum's come into my room going, are you still revising? It's like, yes, because I still don't get it.
Go on, Samara. What do you think?
God, well, I was always in trouble at school, because
you look so innocent.
I know, not through my own fault. They always thought I was just taking the mick with not being. So numbers is a thing with me. I get a complete mental block with anything to do with numbers. So they would go over my times table with me and go over it. And sometimes I'd have a moment where I get it. I'd go back to class the next day and it was gone. I couldn't, I'd not retained the information. So my teachers would stand and scream at me, saying that I was just, you know, playing up basically and acting stupid. And I'd be sat there like, it's gone. It's not in my head. I'm looking at it again and it means nothing to me. So I was always in trouble. I would get like detentions for it. And I was just like, I'm not doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
No one ever thought that I might have a problem. You know, it wasn't until I got to university that I finally got diagnosed with dyscalculia. How do you say it?
Yeah.
That someone finally understood. But, you know, I was quite a lot older at that point. I'd gone through all my younger education with people just thinking I was pretending to be stupid.
Why would somebody pretend to be stupid? That sounds insane, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Our delightful Louise, as ever, keen to comment, says, my youngest has ADHD and autism, and his current group of friends he's been friends with his whole school life. They are most fun and interesting to him, but they now go down a certain path of bad behaviour, and my son has distanced himself from them, rightly so. But it's left him with the other group of boys who are well behaved, but he finds them much less fun and interesting. Now, that's a really good, valid point, isn't it? Because, of course, if you want people to be similar interest to you, it is going to be highly possible when you're on the diagnostics that there are a lot of people who go down the wrong path. So did either of you go down the wrong path with the wrong people? Did you get led astray?
Don't think so. I wasn't that social, to be honest. I remember once I got invited to go on a night out, and I was like, what, 16? And they were like, oh yeah, come hang out with us, we'll get some beer. And I was like, no thank you, I'm staying home with my mum. And I said to you, I've been invited, and you said you should go, and I was like, no, that's dangerous, not doing that. So we stayed home, and instead I did my knitting with Miss Marple, and I was like, I'm an old So, you know, so when I was faced with slightly dangerous looking things, that's the thing. The older I get, the more I'm like, I actually am quite vulnerable when it comes to my brain, because I say it all the time and people find it so funny. But after years of primary school and secondary school saying, stranger danger, beware on the internet, you know, pedophiles are hiding around every corner, I'm now terrified of things like that. And I'm like, I'm not in their age range anymore. I'm not, like, my height is too tall. I'm not in their style. But because that's been so fed into me, I now can't unlearn that information. So I'm too wary. And that probably makes me really bad. Because you often say, why don't you go out? And I'm like, strangers, I might be murdered. And you think I'm being funny. I'm not being funny. If I turn up dead, I've already told you I've got loads of marks of where to find on my body if I get chopped up. You know, it's sad.
So Sophie's put, my mum always used to make me try and make me go too. And Louise has a message for you. Did you then get left out of things a lot?
I don't think so. Because I knew why I didn't want to go, and I knew I didn't want to put myself in a dangerous situation, you know. But the thing is, people think I'm being silly. I will even say to people I've known in the past, if I come and meet up with you, you're not going to murder me, are you? And it sounds really bad. It sounds like I'm being stupid. I don't. I'm genuinely concerned I'm going to be killed. Because I'm so worried about the outside world. So, you know,
you're not alone.
Pulled off, I will survive because I'll be the smart one who doesn't go meeting up with people. You know? But then it's really bad because I'm like, can somebody come with me because I want to do something I'm interested in? So yeah.
So obviously there's banter going on between the Bradburys. So Sophie, Louise is saying, let's be kind to me today. So mother to daughter. But also I was saying about how sad I used to feel when I was the only one not invited to sleepovers or days out. I don't ever recall being invited for a sleepover. I don't ever recall being invited to parties. What about you guys? Because that is a very valid point, because it kind of reiterates that loneliness and isolation, doesn't it? So, Tamara, what about you?
I mean, again, like I think I said before, I kind of only ever had like one close friend at a time. I didn't really ever do big groups of friendships, but like I'd have like one good friend, and then the minute that the other group of girls kind of wanted to leave me out, like, you know, that friend would then go and join them and then also leave me out because it was like the cool thing to do.
Wow.
So I mean, I did do a few sleepovers, but I mean, I had quite a lot of attachment issues when I was a child. So from about 10, I stopped staying over at people's houses anyway.
Yeah. Yasmin, what about you?
I'm just trying to think, really. Primary school, I occasionally got invited, but I didn't really like leaving my house. So we would often try and throw things to get me involved with them. Then when it came to secondary school, we unfortunately lived quite far away from everybody else. So, you know, my first secondary school, I was close enough. We hosted a sleepover there for my birthday, and I think we had about 6 girls come over. And then we moved to a more remote house, and then I moved to another school where I had to catch a train journey where I was by myself quite a lot. So it was more convenient for other people to get together. But I did still do sleepovers and meetups, but it always kind of had to be me initiating them.
Right.
Which I think is kind of all right, because I prefer things on my terms, which makes me sound really controlling. But what I mean is like, you know, if it's in my turf, it's fine. You know, because I never really knew what to do when I was around other people's houses. People are okay with sleeping in the dark. I'm not, so I would just be up on my phone the entire time.
Yeah.
You know, there's always that one at the sleepover who's like, guys, can you shut up? I've got a football game tomorrow. And it's like, why did you come out then? Go away. What was that about? You know, or there's that one who sleeps in until like 11, and it's like everybody else is awake and we're just hanging out with this unconscious body in the corner of the room. It's just it's not that great fun, really.
So Sophie's saying, I was invited sometimes, but the week I wouldn't be invited and it would be all over social media, making it worse. I struggle in big groups of girls too, and I just cannot navigate the social dynamics. That is so perilous, isn't it? That feeling of I want to be included. Why wasn't I included? What's wrong with me? All over, isn't it? It's just horrible. But knowing that if you did go there, how do you then navigate your way around things? And then adding, I was the same in primary school. I'd hate sleeping out. So we'd go to their house for late-overs, and mum would pick me up at like 10 p.m. Still hate staying out even now. Good one. There's running commentary here. You had tons of sleepovers, not as a teenager. Now we've got an argument now. And Sophie has identified, I remember very clearly crying at someone's house until you picked me up at 2 a.m. So you did, and we ate strawberries. Oh. Got a funny feeling something similar like that happened with you, Yasmin, didn't it?
Yeah, so a girl came in. Ironically, the girl who made fun of me the most for not wanting to go around her house for a sleepover because I didn't want to leave my house was the one who ended up crying until her mum picked her up at like 9 p.m. She didn't even laugh at midnight. What's that about?
Yeah. Lightweight.
But it's not like it was just me and her. That was for my birthday. So there was the whole kind of group of friends there. So I'm not really sure what that was about. But There you go.
Okay, so we've kind of explored different ideas around academics where teachers didn't seem to understand that we needed a bit of a helping hand. We've also got the understanding that peers saw us differently, which is quite difficult to deal with, but also where the opportunities for socializing outside of school kind of was actually very challenging. And even if you were lucky enough to be invited, you're still struggling to, in Sophie's words, navigate your way around it. That's quite challenging, isn't it? All of these, though, kind of reiterate to me that actually our self-esteem was pretty shoddy. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And at that point, nobody really was talking about self-esteem.
Well, you say that we're different generations. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I will pull the generation card here. I was online quite a lot. So I had my in real life friends, and I was a different person with them. And it wasn't like when I went online, I changed persona, but I was far more confident online. So I was talking to people from all over the world, but it was from a safe distance, whereas the comfort of my own home, and again, because schools were so like, don't tell strangers personal information, I would just make up different personalities, I would give different names away or whatever. I wouldn't ever use my real name, but I'm still the same person, so I was on Tumblr 2014, 2013, when it was a really kind of dangerous place, really, mental health wise. And unfortunately, fortunately, I didn't get sucked into that kind of viewpoint. But there was a lot of vulnerable people trying to find communities they belonged into online.
Tamara, what about you?
I mean,
in that time frame, were they talking about self-esteem, or were you aware?
No.
For you?
Not that I remember at all. I mean, surely it wasn't all that long ago. It probably was actually quite a while ago now. But
I would say in the last 10 years, we've been banging on about self-esteem quite considerably. Yeah. But there's that horrible lip service of professionals talking about self-esteem, but doing very little about it, and now trying to do more about it, but it feels like it's still not enough. And certainly, for my generation, when I was at primary school, goodness me, we didn't talk about mental health, let alone self-esteem. We talked about, are you able to make friends? Are you able to kind of engage? Are you able to drink your milk up and go out into the playground? Are you able to complete your spellings? Why can't you? There was very little around the understanding of the support. And it wasn't until I went to college that there was this understanding that you could have very brief counselling, but it wasn't formal counselling. It was more, somebody just to go and chat, who would encourage you to go back out there and keep trying. It's quite challenging. And if you've got no self-esteem, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah. I've got like 4 things going on. Sorry, I am listening to you. Cows are trying to steal my blackberries, and I'm seeing comments, so I'm doing 50 different things. Sorry. I was just looking at this one. Yeah. Because that
really?
absolutely makes me roll my eyes. So I joined a Facebook page when I was like 13, 14 about these YouTubers I was really big on. And even though we're all now in like our 20s, we're still on there. And all you regularly see is, guess what Cam's told me to do today? Insert eye roll here. Have a hot bath. Go for a walk. What's your favorite TV show? And it's like, okay, that will stop me from hurting myself. Don't worry about it. I'll go and have a nice bubble bath. You know, you regularly just go on there and it's like, oh, Cams have said that, have they? Oh yeah, no, that sounds. We'll just put that on the idiot pile. That's fine. Don't worry.
So I suppose another part of not feeling good academically, not feeling worthy of having relationships, for me, and I suppose I should say that this might be a trigger warning, is that I actually did a nosedive with my mental health to the point that I quite actively became suicidal when I was 16, 17. Now, you know, neither of you are under obligation to divulge anything, so please don't feel under pressure. But what I'm getting at is that when things feel so wrong for such a long time, how do you deal with that? Because, you know, nobody else seems to get a grasp that you need a helping hand, do they? You know, and if you've been lucky enough to manage to get just one friend, you're going to cling to that like a life raft, aren't you? Whereas for me, I didn't have anybody. And I guess that really hit home, that I had nobody who could even just for 2 minutes make me feel okay. And I felt really vulnerable. So I don't know if you kind of want to comment around, you know, how it affected your mental health, but, you know, do remember you're under no obligation. But certainly from my perspective, once my self-esteem was just trashed, I really was in a very vulnerable position.
From the age of about 14 to 19, I had a suicide note on standby on my phone notes app. Because I never knew if I go out, am I going to come back? You know, and I was very sure I was destined to die a child, unfortunately. I remember for my 18th birthday, I think about 5 days beforehand, I went down and I sat by the beach and I was constantly like, I'm going to go and walk into the water because time crunch is coming. If I die when I'm 18, I'm not a child anymore. You know, so I had this note and I would constantly update it if I felt that it would need to, but it was sat in the back pocket. So if I was ever, you know, found, unfortunately, unalived, they could look through my phone and they would find my suicide note because it would be there, it'd be ready, you know, and that's quite sad. It took me a while to delete it. I probably still have one or two around the house somewhere, like a written version, but I couldn't tell you where they are.
Yeah. Samara, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely as a young adult, like late teens, I was definitely a lot more vulnerable than I kind of want to admit. So, because I struggled with mental health a lot from being very young, you know, I didn't go to high school. So when I finally started kind of overcoming my mental health problems that kind of kept me trapped in the house, I started to go out. And unfortunately, I ended up in a very bad relationship. And that's kind of over the next few years, that was kind of what happened to me. I kind of got into bad relationships with you know, really bad people actually who did take advantage of me. And so I think it definitely put me in a really vulnerable position, that kind of desperate. I was desperate at that point to have somebody.
Yeah.
Like you just needed that one person for yourself. And I clung on to whoever it was, and it was a very bad person, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I guess there's that feeling of loneliness really drives that, you know, am I really so little value to anybody that you become quite desperate to kind of reach out, don't you? But then that just exposes your vulnerability to people who literally have no respect for your needs, for your wishes, for your thoughts and feelings. And it becomes really quite worrying, doesn't it, about, you know, how vulnerable am I? So I just wanted to just answer Louise's question. So she's put a really interesting one here. Alcoholism is linked to self-esteem and ADHD. I know Samara's been looking into some of this, so I'll let her answer this bit. What would you like to tell us, Samara?
Well, I can say that there definitely is a link. I'm sure you'll agree, Lavinia. I mean, one of the most common things that I'm coming across, and it's kind of self-explanatory, can't say that word, is that a lot of us struggle with social interaction and struggle around being around people and being able to be yourself. And alcohol does help that in that moment, but we tend to drink too much and then take it a little bit too far, especially in my experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a definite link. It is a coping mechanism, unfortunately.
But I also think alcoholism, like drugs as well, has been an opportunity to network with other people who are really struggling. But there lies in now a second difficulty of vulnerability, doesn't it? Because, you know, can you be more outgoing if you consume alcohol or if you take drugs? But then also, where are you dependent on getting it from and who from? So that's quite an added consideration, isn't it? On top of all the other issues that we've already explored. Sophie's saying, I have trouble sleeping. And so have you tried a nice bath and reading a book before bed? What you're saying is that obviously didn't work as well as you'd like, or as well as other people liked or recommending. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding that I'm hearing today, don't you think? There's a lot of misunderstanding by a lot of people who just assume that we should just be able to get on with it and kind of rectify the difficulties that we're having with no instruction manual. I suppose the question we need to consider is, did we ever think there was something really wrong that we could go and find out what was wrong that we could then cure ourselves? Did you ever feel that?
I mean, I definitely am guilty of that. I mean, I spent all my teenage years going through CAMHS and mental health services, getting diagnosed with everything. And the diagnosis constantly changing. I was constantly researching, you know, all of these things and coming up with, I've got BPD, I've got bipolar disorder, I've got this, I've got that, constantly, you know, up until very recently, until obviously finding out that, oh, it's autism and ADHD. And that was when it was like, oh, okay, I can forget all the rest of it now.
Yeah. Yasmin?
I think I had moments where I was very low and I felt like I wanted somebody to fix me, but I've always been very aware that even if they had like a magical pill, I don't think it would fix everything. You know, to be honest, I think there's just a little bit too far gone for that. Yeah, it's very hard when I was really at my low points, and I did kind of manage to talk myself into that everything was my fault. There was something wrong with me, and that if I reached out, somebody would be able to fix it. But then obviously I went to CAMHS and they basically said, yeah, you are depressed, but I'm not gonna label you or anything because I know you teenagers will use it as an excuse. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's taken me like what, 2 years to come and actually ask for help, only for you to tell me, nice try, on, out you go. Oh, you'll be on our books for 6 months. You need to come back. It's not a Costa's visit. I'm not going to get a stamp every time I come in. Oh, you've come in 6 times. Here, have a free appointment. That's not going to happen. So I was just like, this is a waste of my time. You've traumatized me to get me to even come in, and now you've just done nothing. So there was no point. You know, now I'm able to look back at it and see what I could have done to maybe help myself quicker. but it's all a learning curve. There's not really much you can do.
Mm. Did either of you feel as if you were going mad, you know, or that there was something like really, really, really wrong? Like, did either of you think that there was something so wrong that it couldn't, you know, it could never be fixed?
Yeah, definitely. That I can completely resonate with that. I definitely had times where I did just think there was something really seriously wrong. I mean, even to the point, at one point, I was convinced I had a brain tumor.
Oh, really?
And to
Wow.
the point that I went to doctors, I went to
Yeah, yeah,
opticians.
yeah.
I was like, you know, there is something wrong. And yeah, that's quite extreme.
It is, but it gets you understanding how worried you were, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because when you start trying to berate yourself, going, something's not right, what on earth is going on wrong here? And because nobody else can give you the answers and you're having to live with this every single day, you kind of feel quite desperate in trying to find out, well, what is wrong with me? Because if I could maybe find out what's wrong with me, maybe all of this might go away. Maybe I could then get the help that I need. You know, so for you, Yasmin, when you're going to CAM saying, you know, it's taken me 2 years to get here, you know, this wasn't a light thought. This was, you know, months and months and months of deteriorating, feeling I've got to do something. And then that complete resignation of, not even you can help me. So now what?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I got a bad CAMS day. I don't know. But if you're eating your lunch while a 16-year-old girl is absolutely crying and you just kind of throw a box of tissues at her, maybe that's not the career for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to go and do something else where you don't have to deal with people, like a librarian. I don't know. It's just not, you know, it's kind of like if you don't like children, why are you a teacher? I just, you know, you have to go into for a service where you're already very vulnerable. So you get the initial phone call of why do you think you need CAMS after you've gone to your GP. I didn't feel that comfortable talking about it on the phone, but I got my appointment. They messed up my appointment. I got blamed for going to the wrong hospital, and I was like, again, doesn't seem like my fault. That seems like a you problem, but, you know, only to then finally get this appointment and basically feel like I'm being laughed at for my feelings. And then I left thinking, well, I feel worse than when I went in. You know, that's why I wouldn't recommend it really to anybody, because knowing how vulnerable I was going into that situation anyway, luckily I had you I could talk to about it, because if I hadn't had anybody, I would have been so lost. Because what do you do from that? I've been told you are essentially broken, but you're not broken enough because, you know, you're going to use it and abuse it, which was a bit like, oh, okay.
I completely understand where you're coming from with that. I mean, my biggest issue with CAMS was that they were constantly trying to put you in a box, which meant they were constantly giving you all these different diagnoses. And in the end, you came away with more than what you went in with. Like, you know, I remember going and then telling me I had OCD straight away. And I was like, okay, it doesn't sound like me. But then they gave me all these leaflets on it to kind of learn about it. And I almost started taking on some of these OCD traits. And then, you know, I had a very strange one. I had something called emetophobia, which is a phobia of vomiting. And they then decided that I had an eating disorder, and they were trying to book me into a hospital away from my parents to get for someone to watch me eat. So, and I'd been there for they didn't even know how long. You know, to the point they made me worse. They made me feel more mentally ill than I actually was. And not a lot has changed, because another someone else in my family who's been using their services only recently have had the same thing. Basically, they've come away with more than what they actually went in for. It was only when I went in and said he's clearly autistic that they went, oh yeah, let's get him on the waiting list for a diagnosis.
The thing is, I remember my CAMS person that I went to go and see ended up sending me away blaming you, saying, I'd
do
like to
blame
talk
the
to your
parents.
mother about her parenting.
Yeah.
She's not a great parent. And I'm like, I'm actually super close to my mum, unlike most people. I get it. She had a go at me. Why is your mum not here? I want to talk to her. And don't give a flying flip if you want to talk to her. I've decided as an adult, I wanted to come to this appointment alone. Go away.
Yeah.
And then she ended up calling you. And I was like, I've signed a piece of paper saying I don't want anybody told about what we talk about. And you went behind my back anyway. And then it's like, well, I can't trust you anyway, so I don't want to go back.
Sophie's made a valid point as well. With her experience, I've spent my entire teenage and adulthood feeling like I'm crazy. I can get so psychotic when I'm so overwhelmed, and nobody understood, and I just thought I was going crazy. Yeah, that's so scary, isn't it?
See, I don't have that, but I did have moments where I was like, I kind of felt like I was on drugs, but I wasn't on drugs. Like I would go and stand outside and go, if I look long enough, maybe I can see the earth moving. And that was a bit like, that's not normal. I would stand there and be like, has the earth just risen a bit? And that's not normal. But I was like, oh, that's not severe enough to be talking to anybody about it.
Yeah. She's added as well, I saw a psychiatrist a few weeks ago who told me I don't have psychosis because my antipsychotics aren't strong enough. When I tried to advocate for myself, he just shot me down again. I have never felt so stupid. I think there are professionals and there are people who think they're professional and quite clearly not, is all I can say to that. You know, I'm very glad that you are on a low amount of antipsychotics, Sophie, because obviously you're able to do far more things without feeling quite so crazy, huh? So we're drawing to a close. Is there any kind of last pointers that we want to talk about in the last 3 minutes?
Don't really think there's anything from me. For once.
Oh, look at you two. Okay, well, what I would say is it's been really interesting learning about how our daily living clearly has been an interesting, very lonely existence where we have lost a shed load of self-esteem, and that's exposed our mental health hugely. And we have taken the onus, have we not, of it must be us. There must be something wrong with us. And I think that's because the environments that we've been in have reiterated that we are the problem, not them. Next week, we're going to come back and talk about the other side of once we've learnt about the screening and the diagnoses, how different things look. But certainly today, what I want us to think about is the fact that we have been influenced and even brainwashed into believing that we were the problem and that we had a mental illness because of it, when in actual fact, what we're going to be talking about next week shows a very different story, does it not, for all three of us, in that there is nothing wrong with us. We are just simply seeing things through an autistic lens, which in the grand scheme of things is not a minority situation to be in. It's far greater in numbers. There are so many people on the autistic spectrum who have a combination of autism and ADHD. And that actually, if the whole world could allow us to be okay in any environment and make allowances for our autistic traits, I think actually all our self-esteem would bounce considerably higher and improve dramatically. But we can have that discussion next week, maybe. So we're going to kind of finish there today. Do join us next week, where we'll be talking about what's it like the other side following a screening or a diagnosis. We'd love you to join us. I hope we won't be late next week. That was my bad today, so I apologise profusely. But we will hopefully see you next week, Wednesday, 12:15. My thanks again to Samara and Yasmin for joining me. It's been really helpful and really interesting. I hope you found it interesting as well.
Yeah, thank
Take
you.
care, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye for now.